workforce has been tasked with cutting $330 billion, where federal aid for higher education, such as Pell Grants, may be a target for reductions. Once again, let me park right there parenthetically to make the observation. This bill also assaults higher education in the United States of America. That's a disgrace. And Mr. Speaker, members of the House Republican Conference predicted that that would occur. Their words, not our words. House Committee on Education and the Workforce has been tasked with cutting $330 billion, where federal aid for higher education, such as Pell Grants, may be a target for reductions. Hispanic students make up a significant share of Pell Grant recipients, many of whom are first-generation college students, striving for a better future for themselves, their families, and our nation. If we are serious about empowering the next generation and strengthening our workforce, we must facilitate and not undermine opportunities that help students succeed. Finally, the House Committee on Agriculture has been directed to cut $230 billion. And then, Mr. Speaker, our Republican colleagues go on to write, while we fully support efforts to eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse, by the way, that's all fake, we support a federal government that's effective, that's efficient, that's equitable, that eliminates waste, fraud, and abuse. That's not what this bill is all about. But it goes on to say, while we fully support efforts to eliminate fraud, waste, and abuse, we must ensure that assistance programs such as SNAP remain protected. I mean, I'm just confused. Remain protected as nearly 22% of Hispanic families rely on this critical program as a temporary safety net during difficult times. And then this letter concludes, written to you, Mr. Speaker, by the Congressional Hispanic Conference. Hispanic Americans are the future of the Republican Party. I'll reserve judgment on that statement. As House Democrats, we're going to fight for every single community in the United States of America, including the Hispanic community. Every single community. We want every single community to experience the good life, to afford to be able to live the good life. That's what we want. For every single community, good paying job, good housing, good health care, good education for your children, and a good retirement. That's what we want for every community. But the Congressional Hispanic Conference, they write, in closing to you, Mr. Speaker, that these Hispanic Americans are closely watching to see if we will govern in a way that honors their values and delivers results. Just to make sure that appropriate authorship is conferred, I'm going to enter the names of the signatories to this extraordinary letter. Mr. Speaker, Tony Gonzalez, Nicole Maliatakis, Monica de la Cruz, David Valadeo, who represents more Medicaid recipients than any other member of Congress, Juan Ciscomani, Rob Bresnahan, what a beauty, James Moylan, Kimberlyn King Hines. They all signed this letter. And the question that many Americans have to ask right now is that after signing a letter indicating your commitment, Mr. Speaker, to protecting Medicaid and SNAP and access to affordable higher education through Pell Grants, how is it possible that, Mr. Speaker, some of our Republican colleagues will turn around and devastate Medicaid, devastate supplemental nutritional assistance, and devastate the ability of Hispanic communities to achieve the type of upward mobility, in part through higher education, that is talked about in this letter? That letter was written in February. And then we go to March. Can I talk about it? I mentioned, Mr. Speaker, I'm here to take my sweet time on behalf of the American people. And so on March 9th, there's a letter that's written to Ways and Means Chairman Jason Smith, Mr. Speaker. By my count, 21 Republicans signed this letter. And it's about the importance of the clean energy economy in the United States of America. I would assume, based on this letter, that all of the signatories to this particular piece of correspondence are now horrified by the attack on clean energy jobs, and the clean energy economy in this one big ugly bill. But we'll see shortly, because everyone is going to have to go on record. But in this particular letter, written on March 9th, Mr. Speaker, 21 members of the House Republican Conference write to Chairman Jason Smith. Countless American companies are utilizing sector-wide energy tax credits, many of which have enjoyed broad support in Congress to make major investments in domestic energy production and infrastructure for traditional and renewable energy sources alike. Both our constituencies and the energy industry alike remain concerned about disruptive changes to our nation's energy tax structure. With all this in mind, the letter continues toward the end. We request that any proposed changes to the tax code be conducted in a targeted and pragmatic fashion that promotes conference priorities without undoing current and future private sector investments, which will continue to increase domestic manufacturing, promote energy innovation, and keep utility costs down. I mean, the language that was chosen there is pretty interesting, but the translation is protect the clean energy economy. That's what this letter was all about. Written by by my count, 21 House Republicans. Mr. Speaker, Andrew R. Garbarino, Jennifer Higgins, Juan Ciscomani, Gabe Evans, David Valadeo. What a prolific writer. Mark Amadei, Michael Lawler, Young Kim, Don Bacon, Vince Fong, Jeff Hurd, Tom H. Kane, Jr., Nick LaLota, John James, Ryan McKenzie, Rob Bresnahan, Marionette J. Miller Meeks, Earl L. Buddy Carter, Dan Newhouse, Eric Hoshin, and David P. Joyce, all writing in support of a clean energy economy. We as House Democrats, we know that there's an all-of-above approach that is underway right now, but we support wind and solar energy, renewable energy, because renewable energy is cheaper energy, and cheaper energy means reducing the high cost of living for everyday Americans. That's what we as House Democrats support. And yet, I'm perplexed because this letter was written, but the one big ugly bill represents an extraordinary and unprecedented assault on clean energy and cheaper energy in the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, I asked the question, what are those 21 Republicans going to do when it comes to voting for this one big ugly bill? And then we've got another letter in April. So we've got a February letter, a March letter, an April letter. Quite elegant with these letters. April 14th, 2025, this is correspondence written by 13 House Republicans, Mr. Speaker. Written to you and Steve Scalise. Majority Leader written to Tom Emmer. The Majority Whip and written to Brent Guthrie, the Chairman of the Energy and Commerce Committee. It says, as members of Congress who helped deliver a Republican majority, many of us representing districts with high rates of constituents who depend on Medicaid, we would like to reiterate our strong support for this program. By the way, a program that the one big ugly bill now will cut and devastate, gut, Mr. Speaker, by almost $1 trillion. In this letter, 13 Republicans say we would like to reiterate our strong support for this program that ensures our constituents have reliable health care. Balancing the federal budget must not come at the expense of those who depend on these benefits for their health and economic security. Mr. Speaker, that's their words, not our words. And then this bill makes an extraordinary declaration. And I think it's important for us to understand who led this bill. David Valadao. These are just facts, Mr. Speaker. Publicly issued letters. David Valadao, Don Bacon, Jeff Van Drew, Rob Bresnahan, Juan Ciscomani, Jen Kiggins, Young Kim, the usual suspects. Robert J. Whitman, Nicole Maliatakis, Nick LaLota, Andrew R. Garbarino, Jeff Hurd, and Michael V. Lawler. By my count, 13 members. And in some of the relevant portions of this letter, it says to strengthen Medicaid, we urge you to prioritize care for our nation's most vulnerable populations. Our constituents are asking for changes to the healthcare system that will strengthen the healthcare workforce, offer low-income, working-class families expanded opportunities to save for medical expenses, support rural and underserved communities, and help new mothers. And in the second paragraph of this letter dated April 14, 2025, Mr. Speaker, these 13 members of the House Republican Conference make this extraordinary representation. It says, however, we cannot and will not support a final reconciliation bill that includes any reduction in Medicaid coverage for vulnerable populations. This bill represents the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. It will devastate vulnerable populations all across America. And so the reality is, all 212 House Democrats are going to stand up and protect the health care of the American people. We're going to protect the Medicaid of the American people against this assault on vulnerable communities. And I'm looking forward to all 13 of you joining us to protect the health care of the American people that you represent. That's the promise, Mr. Speaker, that your Republican colleagues made in this April letter. What's changed? We're looking forward to all 13 Republicans in this letter joining us to protect the Medicaid of the American people. And you know, this SALT issue is also an interesting one. Statement was issued on May 8th from my colleagues in the New York delegation, Elise Stefanik, Andrew Garbarino, Nick LaLota, Mike Lawler. Just facts right now. Big talk about standing up to protect the state and local tax deduction. And what's interesting, let's make sure we set the record straight here. As to what happened to the state and local tax deduction, which impacts millions of hardworking American taxpayers all across the country, including in the districts represented by the individuals that I just named. The state and local tax deduction was decimated, Mr. Speaker, by Donald Trump, House Republicans, and Senate Republicans in 2017 in connection with the GOP tax scam that callously and unnecessarily imposed a $10,000 cap, wiping away thousands of dollars a year for hardworking American taxpayers. Republicans did that. Mr. Speaker, let's set the record straight. And so, Mr. Speaker, there are people in this chamber claiming to be saviors. Saving what? From the devastation that Republicans have wrought by decimating the state and local tax deduction? And you know what's interesting about this is that people who are against this claim that the state and local tax deduction is subsidizing states in certain places to the detriment of others. But every single state that suffered from the Republican effort, Mr. Speaker, under Donald Trump's presidency in 2017 to decimate the state and local tax deduction, every single state is a donor state, sends more money to the federal government than we ever get back in return. A donor state. Some people in this town running around misrepresenting the facts. We're okay to be a donor state, but don't lie to the American people about the reality of the state and local tax deduction. And then you have this extraordinary statement on May 8th, big talk, no action. I guess in Texas they say all hat, no cattle. And so that brings us to this letter that was written prolific writers, Mr. Speaker, in the House Republican Conference on June 6th. I'm really confused by this combination of this particular letter, followed by an interesting statement that was made after the Senate passed Donald Trump's One Big Ugly Bill by Lisa Murkowski. And maybe somebody, Mr. Speaker, can help me reconcile these statements. Because all of us in the House and in the Senate were independently elected to stand up on behalf of our constituents in the chambers that we serve in. I'm going to get back to that point momentarily. So in the House, we passed this One Big Ugly Bill initially in late May. It devastated Medicaid, devastated nutritional assistance, devastated the clean energy economy that actually is benefiting red state after red state after red state in the United States of America. And so, members of the House Republican Conference wrote to Majority Leader Thune and Chairman Crapo. This is after passing a bill in the House of Representatives that devastated the clean energy tax cuts that they are talking about in this letter on June 6th. It says, as members of the House Republican Conference, we write to express our continued support for common sense energy policy and to urge the Senate to substantively and strategically improve clean energy tax credit provisions included in the House-passed reconciliation bill. I mean, what is happening right now? Maybe I don't understand the legislative process. So in this letter, it goes on to say, in relationship to a bill that every single signatory signed and voted for. Our position has always been that the energy tax code should be modernized in a way that promotes fiscal responsibility and business certainty. Fully realizing that balance requires improvements to the House-passed version of H.R. 1. We believe that the Senate now has a critical opportunity to restore common sense and deliver a truly pro-energy growth final bill that protects taxpayers while also unleashing the potential of U.S. energy producers, manufacturers, and workers. In other words, every single one of these signatories, Jen Kiggins, Brian Fitzpatrick, Juan Ciscomani, Nick LaLota, Mike Lawler, Andrew Garbarino, Don Bacon, Mark Amadei, Gabe Evans, Young Kim, David Valadeo, Rob Bresnahan, and Thomas H. Kane, Jr. Every single one of these signatories voted for a House bill that undermined the clean energy economy, noted that it would hurt their own constituents, voted for the bill anyway, and then begged the Senate to make a difference. That's not how we should be legislating in the United States House of Representatives. That's not how you legislate, particularly when every single House Democrat voted against the bill. It left the House, limped out of the House by a single vote. So every single signatory on this letter could have stopped the bill. That you yourself, Mr. Speaker, indicated the signatories of this letter damaged the very thing they claim to be fighting for. I'm confused, perplexed, flummoxed at what the heck is going on. Extraordinary. I mean, I'm just overwhelmed by the amount of correspondence. I only I had to just pick out the ones that were most extraordinary to make sure that they were entered into the record. The most recent one, on the subject of Medicaid, was written on June 24th. It was directed to the Honorable John Thune, Majority Leader of the United States Senate, the Honorable Mike Johnson, Mr. Speaker, Speaker of the U.S. House of Representatives. I think it had, by my count, 16 members. No surprise, y'all. It was authored by David Valadao. I mean, these letters can make up a book, Mr. Speaker. David Valadao, Juan Ciscomani, Rob Bresnahan. Mr. Speaker, these are just facts. Chuck Edwards, Young Kim, Andrew Garbarino, Mike Lawler, Jen Kiggins, the gang is all here again. Jeff Van Drew, Don Bacon, Dan Newhouse, Zach Nunn, Robert J. Whitman, Nicole Malliotakis, Marionette J. Miller Meeks, and Jeff Hurd. 16 members, Mr. Speaker, of the House Republican Conference, in a letter written to you, Mr. Speaker, and the Honorable John Thune, Majority Leader of the United States Senate, on June 24th, and here's the most extraordinary statement that was written in this letter. In the second to last paragraph, I think we call that the penultimate paragraph. In the second to last paragraph, it says, protecting Medicaid is essential for the vulnerable constituents we were elected to represent. Therefore, we cannot support a final bill that threatens access to coverage or jeopardizes the stability of our hospitals and providers. Mr. Speaker, 16 members of the House Republican Conference, who just a few days ago made clear on the record that they will not support devastating cuts to Medicaid. 16 members. All we need, Mr. Speaker, are 4 Republicans from this group to join us, and we can stop these devastating cuts to Medicaid. Join us. Join us. Join us. We welcome you with open arms into the warm embrace of members of Congress who are here to protect the health care of the American people. Just 4 y'all, we welcome you with open arms into the warm embrace of members of Congress determined to protect the health care of the American people. All we need are 4. And so many of y'all are on record. So as I conclude this section of this particular presentation, and we still got some ground to cover, We're going to continue as House Democrats to take our sweet time on behalf of the American people, because the issues are too significant to ever walk away from. I just want to turn to a statement that was issued by Senator Lisa Murkowski. I want to give some love to the other side of the Capitol. And again, Mr. Speaker, these are just the words that were issued. I'm not even trying to characterize the words. But the American people need to hear these words from the people that were sent to Congress to protect their interests. Senator Lisa Murkowski says this was one of the hardest votes I have taken during my time in the Senate. Let me just editorialize there briefly. This should not be a hard vote, Senator Murkowski. This should be a hell no vote on behalf of the people you were sent to Washington to represent. It's a hell no vote for us because we're standing up on behalf of the American people. It should be a hell no vote. But, Mr. Speaker, these are the words. Senator Murkowski says this was one of the hardest votes I have taken during my time in the Senate. And then she keeps it real. As far as I can tell, she says, but let's not kid ourselves. This has been an awful process. Mr. Speaker, those are the words of a Republican senator, not us. This has been an awful process, a frantic rush to meet an artificial deadline that has tested every limit of this institution. While we have worked to improve the present bill for Alaska, it is not good enough for the rest of our nation. And we all know it. Yes, Senator Murkowski, we all know this one big, ugly bill will devastate everyday Americans across this country. And yet, in the concluding paragraph, this comes after Senator Murkowski voted for this bill, the deciding vote in the United States Senate, says, my sincere hope is that this is not the final product. This bill needs more work across chambers and is not ready for the president's desk. We need to work together to get this right. So let me get this straight. I think the number was 16 House Republicans, Mr. Speaker, vote for a bill they know will hurt the communities, Mr. Speaker, that they represent, vote for the bill anyway when any one of them could have stopped this bill from ever leaving the House of Representatives, and then write a letter to the senators in the other side of the Capitol saying, fix this bill, when any single one of them could have stopped the bill dead in its tracks. And then Senator Murkowski, in her chamber, turns out to be the deciding vote for a bill that she says, Mr. Speaker, is not good enough for the rest of the nation, and we all know it, votes for it anyway, and then begs the House to fix the bill. That is not how the people's business should be done in the United States Congress. We have a responsibility to stand up for what is right and stand up for what is right in the chamber that we serve in. That's what we should all be doing. And so our House Republican colleagues, Mr. Speaker, have one last opportunity to join us as Democrats, every single Democrat who's going to stand up and protect the health care of the American people, stand up and protect the nutritional assistance of the American people, stand up and protect our farmers, stand up and protect our veterans, stand up and protect the clean energy economy, stand up to protect our public schools. Every single one of my House Republican colleagues have the opportunity now in this chamber, not the other chamber, in this chamber, to join us as Democrats and stand up for what is right. The eyes of America are watching. Started this process, Mr. Speaker, 3:28 in the morning, this debate. Took to the House floor, maybe an hour and a half after that. And we still have a lot to say. On behalf of the American people. For such a time as this, every single one of us have an opportunity to stand up for what is right here in the United States of America. I want to speak for just a few moments about some of the people who've been targeted in a callous way by this administration, some of the stories that need to be told on behalf of the American people. I mentioned, of course, Mr. Speaker, throughout this process, we have been thankful for the stories shared by everyday Americans who went to bed last night fearing the worst and have woken up this morning horrified by Donald Trump's one big ugly bill that will hurt everyday Americans and rewards billionaires with massive tax breaks that will serve to devastate the social safety net and explode our nation's debt. And so I want to tell a few stories on behalf of our nation's veterans who've also written to us to share their concerns with this one big ugly bill. Victoria from Arizona wrote to us, Mr. Speaker, said, "My husband and I are patriots. We are both Army veterans who were disabled as a result of our service. We have 5 children and run a small electrical contracting business. We live on a fixed income and, like most families, have struggled with rising costs. One of our sons is adopted. He is a wonderful, loving 7-year-old who has autism and ADHD. He qualifies for Medicaid because he was adopted, and it has been the saving grace for his health and well-being. Medicaid is the reason we were able to get his formal diagnosis of his autism and ADHD. It also covers his regular doctor's visits and dental care. We use Medicaid to access in-home therapy for him, and it was a huge help. Slashing Medicaid will have especially dire consequences for rural communities like ours. Forcing hospitals to close. Health resources are already slim in our area. And in this Army veteran rights, President Trump is causing enormous stress and hardship for families like mine. He and his billionaire friends don't need more tax breaks. It's outrageous. The last thing we should even be considering is cutting Medicaid. These programs are lifelines. We agree with you, Victoria. She lives in Arizona's 6th Congressional District. District, Mr. Speaker, currently represented by Congressman Juan Ciscomani. Troy, another veteran, lives in California, Mr. Speaker. Lives in a district currently represented by Jay Obernolte. That's California's 23rd congressional district, I believe. He writes to us and says, I was in the U.S. Army and went to Kosovo in 2001, Iraq in 2003 and 2005. I depend on the VA as I am too disabled to work. I depend on VA health care. My children are now on Medicaid. I have worked from when I was 14 years old to 42. I am suffering from long COVID. And until I can return to work, I need help from the American people. I have had your backs. Time for you to cover my back. Writes Troy. Mr. Speaker, I need NIH's help. Now is the time to stand up for all Americans. Stop the assault on the VA, NIH, Medicaid, and the rest of Americans. We agree with you, Troy. It's time to stop the assault on the American people. Stop the assault that is represented in this one big, ugly bill. Christy, another veteran, wrote to us and says, I was drafted in 1970. My choice was incarceration or militarization. So I enlisted in the Navy and became a Navy corpsman serving on the USS Long Beach, CGN 9, and her Marine detachment, where I was assigned to the 3rd Marines, 1st Medical Battalion. I was blessed. I lived through 2 tours, giving medical care to my shipmates. Every other day, I was assigned to flight ops to transfer or pick up the wounded and dead Marines from shore to ships waiting offshore about 8 miles. I hated the smells of war. This veteran writes, death and misery were my constant companions. The war left me unsettled, mentally and morally corrupt. For 50 years, I have suffered with my PTSD, which went undiagnosed for years. After 12 years of VA therapy and working hard for my soul to be repaired, I find myself living alone and isolating from others. And I am one of the lucky ones thanks to the care I have received from the VA. Veterans pouring out their heart and their soul, sharing their anxiety with all of us, urging this Congress to do something, to stand up on behalf of the veterans who are going to be hurt by this one big ugly bill, devastated by this one big ugly bill. We also heard, Mr. Speaker, from Timothy, who I believe may have written to us from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. He says, "My name is Timothy. And for the past 5 years, I have worked at the Department of Housing and Urban Development in field policy and management, the Department of Housing and Urban Development that was once led so ably by our former colleague, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, and now has been taken in a very different direction." Timothy writes, "In this role, I've educated the community about HUD's programs such as FHA loans and housing counseling that allow people to purchase homes, affordable rent housing that help people pay their rent, and homeless services that help people find shelter and leave the streets. I have worked with internal data that focused on improving our programs. Most recently, I worked with a team that hired people from housing authorities and Job Corps with the goal of providing people a career and a way off government assistance. Those incredible people, along with myself, have been fired by Elon Musk's Doge. My entire professional career, I have taken jobs that I considered bigger than me. I served in the military, both enlisted and as an officer. I deployed. And I'm now a disabled vet with a rating of 90%. After the military, I focused on giving back and challenging myself in a way, continuing a job that was bigger than myself, so I joined the Peace Corps. Served in Ukraine for years, working as a youth development volunteer. Now as a HUD employee, I'm being fired by an unelected official and being called lazy by my president. I want to know why Elon Musk has this power and authority and why our elected officials are not doing more to stop it. I have served this country and the government my entire life because I love my country. Why is this happening? Tim writes to us. That is such an important question, Mr. Speaker. Why is this happening in the United States of America? Why are we living in a country where this administration has launched an all-out assault on veterans in the United States of America, firing veterans like Tim in the United States of America, jeopardizing services from the VA, earned benefits that these veterans are entitled to because of their extraordinary service. Men and women in uniform who serve this country, Mr. Speaker, benefits that they've earned, and now find themselves in the legislative line of fire from their own government, their own country, and stand to be hurt in such an extraordinary way by this extreme Republican budget, this one big, ugly bill. We're here on the House floor, Mr. Speaker, to say to Tim and every single veteran who put on the uniform, every single man and woman who served this country, we will not abandon you in your hour of need. Right. We're going to stand up for every single veteran in this great country and make sure that the veterans of the United States of America are treated with the dignity and respect that you deserve. That is our promise to each and every veteran in the United States of America, and that's why, Mr. Speaker, we stand in strong opposition to Donald Trump's one big ugly bill. An all-out assault. Here in the United States of America, an extraordinary assault. An assault on the economy, an assault on our veterans, an assault on farm country, an assault on healthcare, an assault on nutritional assistance. And of course, this one big ugly bill and the Trump administration, I wish it was not so. Because at the beginning of this Congress, Mr. Speaker, I stood right where you stand right now and said in my first remarks to this Congress and the American people that as Democrats, we were prepared to find common ground on any issue to make a difference in the lives of the American people we all represent. But then, Mr. Speaker, beginning on January 20th, a flood of extremism, the likes of which have never before been seen in the United States of America, has been unleashed on the American people. An all-out assault on the American way of life. An assault on small businesses that is underway here in the United States of America. We should all recognize that small businesses represent the heart and soul of the American economy. And if we're going to stand up for any group of people here in the United States of America, in addition to our veterans, our men and women in uniform, and I'm proud that I stand here as the son of someone who once wore the uniform. My father, he's in heaven right now. Marlon Jeffries grew up in Newark. His nickname was Pudding. One of my regrets is that I never got to ask him, how did he get the nickname Pudding? But he left Newark as a high school graduate and put the uniform on, enlisted in the Air Force, and served in Germany during the Cold War. We have to stand up for our veterans, stand up for small businesses. And we've heard a lot throughout this process about concerns from small business entrepreneurs here in the United States of America. Heard from Mercedes, lives in the great state of Colorado. Mercedes writes, my husband and I are the owners of a small business. Without the ACA, my family would not be able to afford health insurance. My daughter also receives free dental coverage as a result of the ACA. I still have major issues with our health care system, but at least we have health insurance. My mother, who is retired, also receives benefits from Medicaid in addition to her Medicare. She would not be able to afford health insurance or dental insurance due to the fact she lives on a fixed income. Any cuts to these programs would be detrimental to our health and welfare as a family. I want to thank Mercedes for reaching out and sharing her story, because it helps to put to bed the lie that's been told, Mr. Speaker, by some people in this town. That the people, the everyday Americans who are participating in, have access to programs like the Affordable Care Act, are unworthy, aren't hardworking American taxpayers. They are hardworking American taxpayers. A group of people that real leaders in this country, beginning in modern American history, as I illustrated earlier from President Franklin Delano Roosevelt all the way through, our most recent president, who we served with in the last Congress, have recognized that we have a sacred obligation to stand up for everyday Americans who are struggling right now, including our small business entrepreneurs, the heart and soul of the American economy, who right now are dealing with such economic uncertainty because of the erratic, reckless, and dangerous Trump tariffs that have unleashed so much chaos and uncertainty, raising costs for small business owners all across the country, undermining their ability to fully achieve their entrepreneurial dreams. This is not who we should be in the United States of America. Small business owners under assault by this administration. And as a target on the back of many of these small business owners as a result of this one big ugly bill. Janice wrote to us. She's from the great state of Michigan, the heartland of our country. So thankful to all the members of the Michigan delegation and what they represent. Janice, however, she resides, Mr. Speaker, in the 7th Congressional District, represented by Congressman Tom Barrett. Says that small business owner, mother, ACA recipient in Michigan, who recently spoke about how Trump's tariffs would potentially force her to close her business, which has given her family a livelihood for a decade and helped put 2 children through college. I just don't understand why Trump thinks putting tariffs will help American businesses. It's not. She writes, it's going to decimate us. People like us will be hit the hardest. But then Janice shows the great resolve of the American people, the great spirit of resilience of the American people, the refusal to run away from difficult circumstances. Janice writes, people like us will be hit the hardest. But Janice then writes, I refuse to call it quits. I won't give in to him. Janice, neither will House Democrats. Not now, not ever. We will never give in to this type of extremism as being unleashed on the American people. We will continue to stand up for you. One last small business owner that I'd like to mention. So many who've written to us, whose stories I want to be able to share, but let me perhaps go back to the Big Apple, the great state of New York. But let me also say to the American people, one of the ways in which we've received all of these stories, and we urge you to continue to share these stories from all across the land. You can share your story with us at democraticleader.house.gov/share your story. democraticleader.house.gov/share your story. We want to hear from the American people as to how we can best represent your interests on this day and on all days moving forward, because your stories are powerful. Your stories will continue to give us the resolve to fight for an America that's fair and just, an America where every single person can afford to live the good life. Good paying job, good housing, good health care, good retirement, and of course a good education for your children. That's not too much to ask in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Work hard, play by the rules, and every single American should be able to afford to live the good life. But we know that in this country, far too many people are living paycheck to paycheck. Far too many small business entrepreneurs living paycheck to paycheck. And justifiably expect better from this government. We should be working hard in a bipartisan way to make their life better, not unleashing shock, awe, and pain on the American people. That's what this one big ugly bill will do. Devastate everyday Americans. Linda writes to us, a small business owner. I believe she's from the North Country. Lives in New York's 21st Congressional District, Mr. Speaker. Linda's a flower farmer and flower importer in upstate New York. Small business has been impacted by Trump's tariffs on products being imported from Western Europe, the Netherlands, I believe. The economic strain and uncertainty imposed by the tariffs on small business owners operating on slim margins has caused Linda and her customers to incur additional expenses. Linda tells us, Mr. Speaker, everything was going really well until the tariffs. And now she worries the business will go bankrupt and be forced to close if the tariffs stay in place. How is it that we're living in America where President Trump, Mr. Speaker, and House Republicans promised to address the high cost of living in the United States, promised to lower costs on day one? But costs aren't going down, they're going up. And as a result of these Trump tariffs, are now at risk of experiencing thousands of dollars per year in additional costs. And there is nothing in this one big ugly bill that is going to meaningfully make the lives of everyday Americans, of hardworking American taxpayers, of working class folks, of middle class folks, of all those Americans who aspire to be part of the middle class, of the poor and the sick and the afflicted. Nothing in Donald Trump's one big ugly bill that will meaningfully make their life more affordable. An all-out assault on the economy. We're dealing with an all-out assault on health care, on Medicaid, on the Affordable Care Act, on the Children's Health Insurance Program. All-out assault on the care, Mr. Speaker, being provided by Planned Parenthood. The medical care being provided by Planned Parenthood that is jeopardized in this very bill. All-out assault on hungry children, on hungry veterans, and on hungry seniors, millions of people who will lose their nutritional assistance, will go hungry. Food is being ripped out of their mouths by this one big ugly bill, Mr. Speaker, that so many of my Republican colleagues seem prepared to support, notwithstanding their prior statements on the record to the contrary. All-out assault on veterans, an all-out assault represented in this bill on small business owners and entrepreneurs who are the heart and soul of our economy. And this bill also represents an all-out assault on law-abiding immigrant families. And Mr. Speaker, we're going to tell their stories as well. We're going to tell their stories. We're going to tell their stories. Because what's happening in this country, an all-out assault on law-abiding immigrant families, is unconscionable, unacceptable, and it's un-American. Because this is a country that should continue to pride itself as a nation anchored in the rule of law, and at the same time, a nation anchored in our journey as one of immigrants from all over the world. And we should never abandon that journey. We're approaching the 249th birthday of this great country, this exceptional country. And I believe, and we can go directly, if necessary, Mr. Speaker, to the words that were initially issued by Thomas Jefferson, the author of the Declaration of Independence. And he went through a whole series of indictments against the king. That America, 13 colonies, which came to 13 states, were working hard to break free from. I mentioned earlier the Declaration of Independence and of course some of the aspirational aspects of it, there are really two parts, as I can tell. I'm not a constitutional scholar. I'm thankful for the constitutional scholars that serve in this Congress. No one more constitutional and more scholarly than my friend and colleague, the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin, who continues to lead the charge, standing up for the Constitution here in the United States of America. But as I read the Declaration of Independence, there seem to be two parts to it. There's the aspirational part, Mr. Speaker, of the Declaration of Independence. Of course, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. We understand that now in a more enlightened way. All men, all women, all children, all of God's children created equally. That they are entitled to certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And so we spent a little time talking about what that could look like, our commitment to bringing about the American dream, the good life for every single person in this country, everybody. Work hard, play by the rules. You should be able to afford the good life in the United States of America. That's what we're going to continue to work on. Bring the American dream to life, consistent with that aspirational part of the Declaration of Independence, the life, the liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But then, as far as I can tell, there was also a second interesting part of the Declaration. It was the indictment against the king. And I commend everyone in this chamber, all of the American people who may be observing the proceedings in the House of Representatives, particularly as we approach July 4th, to read that Declaration of Independence. Perhaps I may even enter it into the record later on today. Because we're here, Mr. Speaker, to take our sweet time on behalf of the American people, to make sure as best I can, as best we can, to cover all of the things that as Democrats we're fighting hard to defend during this extraordinary moment of assault directed at the American people as a result of this one big, ugly bill that will hurt everyday Americans in order to reward billionaires with massive tax breaks and then exploding the deficit and the debt in ways that will jeopardize the future of our children and our grandchildren. But the aspirational part of the Declaration of Independence, of course, that is often famously quoted. But then if you read other parts of the Declaration of Independence, extraordinarily written document, it reads like an indictment against the extremism of the king. It reads like an indictment against the kings. I think of King George. It reads like an indictment against King George's flood the zone strategy. It reads like an indictment against King George's shock and awe strategy. It reads like an indictment against what I think may have been called Project 1775, which is what brought us to Project 1776. And you look at this indictment, and one of the things it alludes to, it talks about, is the notion of the king's effort to stop the assimilation of people from other parts of the world into the United States of America. So we understand that from the very beginning of this great country, there was a recognition, of course, of the importance of immigration to the success and vitality of the United States of America. And let me be clear, Mr. Speaker, so there's no misrepresentation. As House Democrats, we understand the importance, the urgency of securing the border. We believe that our immigration system is broken and that it should be fixed in a comprehensive and bipartisan way. So many leaders in that effort, so many big ideas were willing to partner in a bipartisan way. Pramila Jayapal, Linda Sanchez, Adriano Espaillat, Tom Suozzi, so many others. Veronica Escobar, we want to partner to fix our broken immigration system in a bipartisan and comprehensive way, secure our border. But we're also going to make sure we stand up for our nation's heritage, a nation of immigrants, which continues to this very day. It's an important part of American exceptionalism, and as far as I can tell, in my reading of the original document, the writings of the founders of this great country, the framers of the Constitution, they recognized it from the very beginning. They weren't perfect. We didn't have a perfect start. But of course, as the preamble to the United States Constitution set forth, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. Mr. Speaker, we've been set on this magical course, our march toward a more perfect union. And the immigration journey has always been an important part of the American journey. That's why it's heartbreaking to see some of the things that are happening in the country right now. The targeting in such an extraordinary way of law-abiding immigrant families, including American citizens. How can this be in the United States of America? Some people who might suggest that we should stay away from these stories. No, I'm going to lean into this part of the American journey because we support our heritage as a nation of immigrants. And we're going to stand up for dreamers, stand up for farm workers, stand up for law-abiding immigrant families all across this country. U.S. citizen children have been deported, Mr. Speaker. Is this who we've become in the United States of America? How can this be? This is extraordinary. 2-year-old American named Manu Borges Santos was born in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in September of 2022. February, she was taken into custody in Florida alongside her mother and father, both of whom were undocumented. And as a result of this situation, 2-year-old Manu was deported to Brazil. Because of the Trump administration, Manu, a U.S. citizen, only 2 years old, is now effectively stateless. Manu is not a citizen or resident of Brazil. She's a 2-year-old girl, an American citizen. Removed from her homeland, but can't get legal status in her parents' ancestral home. And as a result of her inability to get citizenship down in South America, because she's an American citizen, she has no right to routine pediatric checkups, even though Brazil has a public health system, cannot easily enroll in daycare, and finds herself in an untenable situation. I think we are better than this. We've got to find a better way, because I thought this administration promised, Mr. Speaker, to target violent felons, not 2-year-old American citizens. That's unacceptable, as far as I can tell, in the United States of America. Target violent felons all you want. We support that. They should be deported. But why are resources being spent targeting 2-year-old American children? That's not American. And I don't believe the American people support that. Mr. Speaker, that's not what this country should be all about. Manu wasn't the only one. The only American citizen who's been targeted by the deportation machine, a deportation machine that will be unleashed on steroids by this one big ugly bill. We know that, in fact, is the case. That's not hyperbole. It's not a hypothetical. It's not hype. J.D. Vance told us the other day, don't worry about the cuts to Medicaid. Don't worry about the fact that this is the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. Don't worry about the fact that millions of Americans, more than 17 million Americans, will lose their health care, and many more will experience higher premiums, copays, and deductibles, whose life will measurably get worse as a result of this one big ugly bill. Vice President J.D. Vance said, don't worry about that, because it's all about the deportation machine that's not targeting violent felons. Apparently, much of what has been unleashed on the American people targeting American citizens, like a 2-year-old American girl with the initials VML, who was deported alongside her mother and sister to Honduras without any meaningful due process. VML was taken into custody by ICE on April 22nd. April 22nd happens to be the birthday of my mom. I love you, Miss Lanita Jeffries. If you're watching right now, I love you. My younger brother and I, we thank you for what you did, for your sacrifice in raising us, to try to be the best citizens that we can be. VML was taken into custody by ICE on April 22nd while attending a routine check-in at a New Orleans immigration office with her mother. VML's undocumented mother had no criminal history. And had she been allowed due process, they could have contested the removal. Instead, this 2-year-old American citizen was never given a chance to exercise her rights by the Trump administration. That is not who we are. We are better than this in the United States of America. Carlos or Carrie Lopez Alvarado, a U.S. citizen, arrested while she was 9 months pregnant, masked men wearing Border Patrol uniforms, followed by a white truck into a building's private parking in the city of Hawthorne. In that truck was Carrie's partner, Brian. When she tried asking questions about who the agents were and what authority they had to arrest her partner, she was arrested. And Carrie, an American citizen, recounted that they started grabbing me from both sides, and I ducked down to sort of shield my stomach because I was afraid. An American citizen, afraid that they were going to hurt me. She told them her due date. She was 9 months pregnant. Apparently, these CBP officers responded, okay, your baby is going to be born here, but you're from Mexico, right? They were wrong. They were detaining an American citizen. This is what has been unleashed on the American people. One last story that I feel compelled to share on this issue. Mr. Speaker, I still got some ground to cover.
Take your time. Take your time.
On a few other issues of importance to the American people, but one last story that I think needs to be shared, Mr. Speaker, in connection with this issue. This received some attention, some notoriety. Americans were horrified, should be horrified. All of us should be horrified I'll never forget the journey that we were originally on. Set forth, spoken to by the founders of this country. E pluribus unum, out of many, one. How can we forget that at this moment in time? One last story in this area that I feel compelled to share, Mr. Speaker. Story of Narciso Barranco, 48-year-old undocumented landscaper who has been in the United States since the 1990s and has no criminal record. Here's the thing that got me about this story. Caused me to ask the question about this particular moment, the type of deportation machine that has been unleashed on the American people. Narciso, this landscaper, raised 3 American sons, all of whom became Marines, 2 of whom are currently, Mr. Speaker, on active duty Marines. His sons, juggling their military assignments, have been trying to deal with the costs and the paperwork required to adjust their father's immigration status through parole in place, a program which allows undocumented members of military families to apply for a green card. But these men in uniform, juggling their military assignments, had not gotten there yet. So after 3 decades, living, working, and raising a family of patriots in the United States, Narciso was violently arrested while he was mowing the grass at an IHOP restaurant. We don't have to speculate as to whether this was true or not. In a video captured of the incident, you see he was sprayed with pepper gas. He was detained on the ground. He was not resisting. And he was hit repeatedly in the head by masked federal agents while he was on the ground. Let me park right there parenthetically for a moment. Seems to me that every other law enforcement professional in the United States of America has to disclose their identity in a way that is identifiable. These masks need to come down. They need to come down. They need to come down. These agents should just be held to the same set of standards as every other law enforcement officer in the United States of America. And if you don't understand the righteousness of that position, just study the case of Narciso. His oldest son, a Marine veteran, said in an interview, what we weren't prepared for and didn't prep him for was these guys attacking him. We never expected anything like that. We expected these guys to act professionally. And up to the standards of the United States government. Are masked, armed federal agents who beat people on the ground really the standards the United States government should be standing by? Are these the types of actions, Mr. Speaker, that House Republicans endorse and support? This is not the way that anyone in the United States of America should be treated, particularly the father of 3 patriotic Marines. No one should be treated this way, but certainly not the father of 3 patriotic Marines in the United States of America. It's outrageous. It's out of control. And it's completely and totally unacceptable. Unacceptable. Unacceptable here in the United States of America. We are better than this. Better than this. Mr. Speaker, I've talked about the aspirational vision that we have for a country where everybody can afford to live the good life and work hard, play by the rules, experience the American dream, live the good life, good paying job, good housing, good health care, good education for their children, and a good retirement. That's not too much to ask in the United States of America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, a great country, an exceptional country, as Abraham Lincoln once observed in a speech in the chamber of the House of Representatives. America, the last best hope of Earth. Spent a little time talking about the type of things, the type of America that we should be working hard in a bipartisan way to bring about, and spent some time critiquing this one big, ugly bill. And it's not like Republicans, Mr. Speaker, weren't given every opportunity to try to address the concerns that we have raised. I'm thankful for my colleagues in all of the committees of jurisdiction who worked hard, pulling all-nighters, offering amendments to try to improve this one big, ugly bill. We've actually introduced throughout this process, Mr. Speaker, hundreds of amendments. Just yesterday before the Rules Committee, hundreds of amendments. And before that, in late May, when the initial bill was being debated in a marathon session before the Rules Committee, more than 125 or so Democrats offering more than 500 different amendments to improve this bill, to stand up for the American people. Doing so over and over and over again throughout this process. And so, Mr. Speaker, I think it's important for the American people to understand what exactly House Republicans have rejected. What changes have House Republicans rejected to this one big, ugly bill? We repeatedly tried to offer an amendment, both in rules and on the House floor on behalf of the American people, to strike every single provision that would cause the largest cuts to health care and food assistance in history, which will result in 17 million people or more losing health coverage and jeopardizing nutritional benefits for about 42 million Americans who might otherwise go hungry. Republicans voted down that amendment. I believe it was Representative Amelia Sykes had an amendment to strike the Medicaid cuts in the bill to prevent millions of people from losing their health insurance and to stop hospitals and nursing homes from shutting their doors. Republicans voted down that amendment. Representative Judy Chu had an amendment striking cuts to the Affordable Care Act. Cuts that are in this one big ugly bill that will cause millions of everyday Americans to lose their health insurance or experience having their costs go up. Mr. Speaker, you know that Republicans voted down that amendment. Representative Lauren Underwood from the great state of Illinois had an amendment, and I wish I could go through all of the amendments that have been introduced, but I'm going to highlight as many as I can. Representative Lauren Underwood had an amendment to ensure that people who get their insurance through the ACA, Obamacare, will not see their premiums increase. As I mentioned earlier, that as a result of this one big, ugly bill, Mr. Speaker, premiums, copays, and deductibles are going to go up for millions of Americans. Many will lose coverage. And so this amendment was introduced to ensure that people who get their insurance through the ACA will not see their premiums increase this year, which is expected to cause 5 million people to lose coverage. Mr. Speaker, Republicans voted down that amendment. Representative Kelly Morrison had an amendment that strikes the defunding of Planned Parenthood, which provides access to life-saving cancer screenings and reproductive health care. Now, last year, Republicans, Mr. Speaker, promised that reproductive health care, reproductive freedom was a state issue. President Trump promised that reproductive health care, reproductive freedom was a state issue. And yet in this bill, there's a backdoor attack on reproductive freedom by targeting health care, preventative health care, that Planned Parenthood provides to millions of people all across this country. Representative Kelly Morrison had an amendment that strikes the defunding of Planned Parenthood, which provides access to life-saving cancer screenings along with reproductive health care. Republicans voted that down. Let me pause there parenthetically just to make one observation on this issue of reproductive freedom. What we're seeing right now in the House of Representatives, Mr. Speaker, Republicans unleashing a march toward a nationwide abortion ban. That's what's going on right now. What does this provision have to do with making life more affordable for everyday Americans? Nothing. This is all part of a right-wing ideological extreme effort to undermine reproductive freedom in the United States of America. Let me make something clear, Mr. Speaker. House Democrats believe in a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions, a decision that should be between a woman, her family, her faith, and her doctors. That's it, period, full stop. And we will continue to fight for reproductive freedom in the United States of America. And we will not rest, Mr. Speaker, until the Women's Health Protection Act becomes the law of the land here in the United States of America. Big difference between us and them. Big difference. Mr. Speaker, Representative Johanna Hayes introduced an amendment to strike all provisions that would cut food assistance for children, seniors, and veterans. Republicans voted that down. How cruel. How cruel. Representative Shontel Brown had an amendment to strike burdensome red tape requirements that threaten nutritional assistance for millions of Americans and their families. Republicans voted that down. I mentioned earlier, Mr. Speaker, this notion that Republicans are trying to spin to the American people that the attack on nutritional assistance, imposing these paperwork requirements, or as Frank Pallone would say, red tape requirements, that's all about waste, fraud, and abuse. I think common sense suggests to us it has nothing to do with waste, fraud, and abuse. Mr. Speaker, I made clear earlier that as House Democrats, we believe that as custodians of taxpayer dollars, we need to make sure that we are spending that money efficiently, effectively, and equitably. And that we are committed to eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse wherever it may be found. I mean, one of the things that's interesting about this bill, this appears to be part of the deal that was negotiated by the senator from Alaska, is that the states apparently that have highest error rates with respect to supplemental nutritional assistance are shielded from the initial impact of the nutritional assistance cuts. Let's think about that for a moment. How can it be that Republicans, Mr. Speaker, are claiming that this bill has anything to do with waste, fraud, and abuse. And yet the states with the highest error rate, as Republicans during the Rules Committee acknowledged under questioning from Jim McGovern and Mary Gay Scanlon and Joe Neguse and Teresa Leger Fernandez, acknowledged that the states with the highest error rates actually shielded from the initial impact of the cuts to supplemental nutritional assistance. Angie Craig pointed this out. It exposes, in my view, the lie being told, Mr. Speaker, by some in this town that this effort, this one big, ugly bill, is somehow about combating waste, fraud, and abuse. One of the reasons why we know common sense dictates that this one big, ugly bill has nothing to do with meaningfully going after waste, fraud, and abuse is that, on average, SNAP beneficiaries receive $6 per day to try to help them not go hungry, to try to make sure that veterans and children and seniors don't go hungry. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important for the American people to process. That's what SNAP on average provides, $6 per day. At the same time, Elon Musk, his federal contracts, as we understand it, amount to $8 million per day. Mr. Speaker, if Republicans were really serious about targeting waste, fraud, and abuse in the United States of America, start there. $8 million per day. Start right there. Don't take it, don't rip it from the mouths of children, seniors, or veterans. If Republicans were really serious about targeting waste, fraud, and abuse, start right there with Elon Musk. And we'll join you. We'll welcome you into the warm embrace of the House Democratic Caucus to target waste, fraud, and abuse. Start right there. You can start right there, Mr. Speaker. Start right there. Ranking members Jim McGovern and Bobby Scott had an amendment, Mr. Speaker, to prohibit the bill from going into effect unless cuts to Medicaid and SNAP would not result in fewer families being eligible for free school meals. Mr. Speaker, as you know, Republicans voted down that amendment. We can't find a way to stand up for school meals, for school breakfast, for school lunch. That's just cruel. It is callous. It's a corrupt perversion of this process, targeting, as this one big, ugly bill does, school children, hungry school children in the United States of America. Speaker, Representative Mike Thompson had an amendment that would have ensured Americans would not see their energy costs go up and to protect the millions of good-paying jobs that this bill will eliminate, because this one big ugly bill puts a target on the backs of the clean energy economy, on clean energy jobs, which result in cheaper energy and lower costs for the American people. We were told by President Donald Trump when he was on the campaign trail, costs would go down on day one. He was going to focus, we were told, on lowering the high cost of living in the United States of America. That's not what this bill does. And we know it, because 21 House Republicans made that clear in a letter that I cited earlier that's now part of this public record. Representative Mike Thompson, supported by others, had an amendment. All of these amendments co-sponsored by members all across the gorgeous mosaic of the House Democratic Caucus. We're proud of the fact that we look like we represent, in the most intimate way possible, consistent with John Adams' original vision of the House of Representatives, that the House should be a portrait of the American people. That's what we represent. We're proud of that fact. The gorgeous mosaic of the American people. That's what we're all about, in the most intimate way possible. That's why we love the House, and what the House is supposed to represent, the best of the House, not what we're seeing on the floor right now. Mr. Speaker, Republicans voted down the amendment introduced by Representative Mike Thompson that was designed to ensure that Americans would not see their energy costs go up. It was also designed to protect the good-paying American jobs that were part of both the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Jobs Act, the Infrastructure and Jobs Act, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. And so this amendment was designed to lift up the principle of actually trying to create good-paying union jobs that actually allow people to provide a comfortable living in the United States of America. Amongst this all-out assault that we are witnessing in the United States is an all-out assault on organized labor, an assault on collective bargaining, an assault on the freedom to negotiate. What's the difference, Mr. Speaker, between us and our colleagues on the other side of the aisle? I think one of the things that is a clear difference, Mr. Speaker, is that we believe, we recognize that in connection with this journey, work hard, play by the rules, imagine and dare to dream the ability to live the good life, to experience the American dream. An American dream that when you work hard and play by the rules, you should be able to provide a comfortable living for yourself and for your family. Educate your children. Purchase a home. Have access to high-quality health care, go on vacation every now and then then one day retire with grace and dignity. That's the American dream. That's the ability to afford and access the good life. And we believe as House Democrats that no single force in the United States of America has done more to bring the American dream to life than organized labor, and we will continue to stand up for organized labor today, tomorrow, and always. Not undermine good-paying union jobs. That's what this bill, this one big ugly bill, does in the United States of America. We're going to stand up. Stand up. Stand up for organized labor. This is personal to me. My parents, Marlon Jeffries, Lanita Jeffries, they raised us, my younger brother Hassan and I, they raised us in a working class union household. I'm thankful for that. We were raised in central Brooklyn. Now, my mom grew up in Connecticut. And I mentioned, that must be Johanna Hayes. I don't see Rosa DeLauro on my sight line, but we're so thankful for all of the members of the Connecticut delegate. I'm an unofficial sixth member of the Connecticut delegation. My mom raised in Bristol, Connecticut. She went to Bristol High School. Thankful for my mom. And my dad, I mentioned earlier, he grew up in Newark. That must be LaMonica McIver. I grew up in Brick City. I mentioned earlier he had a nickname Pudding. I failed to ask him, but I'm going to see if my mom can unlock the key to that nickname for me. My mom grew up in Bristol, Connecticut, and my father grew up in Newark. And I mentioned earlier that he then went off to serve this country in uniform as an Air Force member, served in Germany during the Cold War. I think about that a lot. I didn't get to talk too much about it. I wish I would have had the opportunity to talk a little bit more with my dad about that. It's an extraordinary thing in the United States of America that someone could grow up in inner city Newark and then have the ability, in part, thanks to President Harry Truman, to serve with people of all races, to defend this great country. I wish I would have had the opportunity to talk to my dad a little bit more about his experience in Germany, because the one thing that I've been able to take away from that experience was that he came back having fallen in love with Heineken's and Beck's. But he came back after serving this country, Mr. Speaker, in uniform, as so many men and women do right now in uniform. And let me make clear, we're so thankful, we're so appreciative of the courage of men and women in uniform who serve in the United States military, and we will always stand behind you. We thank you for your service, your patriotism, your courage, your heroism, and your sacrifice, lifting up the freedom that is America. You are not suckers, you are heroes. You're not suckers, you're heroes. We're thankful for your service. The men and women, no better hype person than Frederica Wilson. So my dad, as I mentioned, grew up in Newark. My mom in Bristol, Connecticut. So they meet at Central State University. Proud to note, a historically black college and university that has given so much. Historically black colleges and universities to the United States of America, and we will always stand behind you. Always stand behind you. We will always stand behind you. I wouldn't be here right now without a historically black college and university. I'll never run away from that. I will never run away from that. And we're proud of the fact, we can check the record, proud of the fact that over the last few years prior to this administration, historic investment in Hispanic serving institutions, in historically black colleges and universities, in higher education. That's part of who I am right now. I don't know if I'll have time to tell the story of my grandmother. Maybe I will. I got so many stories, I feel like I'm in a hip-hop studio right now. But they all relate to what makes every single one of us, every single Democrat, have a story to tell. A story to tell. Brooklyn will get that. Every single one of us have a story to tell. That leads us to this moment. It's the reason why we're fighting hard against this incredible and unprecedented assault on the American way of life and an assault on organized labor. So my parents, they meet Central State University, and Dad would tell us, my younger brother and I, that it was love at first sight. But apparently my mom said, not so fast. But it worked out. I'm thankful for that. They met at Central State University. And so, of course, I mentioned that mom from Connecticut, father from New Jersey. Why was it that we grew up in New York City? Apparently, they compromised and moved to Brooklyn. And so I'm raised in Brooklyn, New York, working class neighborhood, in the middle of the crack cocaine epidemic. Dangerous times in New York City. In a union household, proud that I grew up in the Cornerstone Baptist Church, still a member of the Cornerstone Baptist Church. Grew up in this union household. And Mr. Speaker, I land on that moment, and every single one of us as House Democrats have a similar story to tell about why in our heart, in our soul, in our essence, in our experience, we're so horrified by the attacks on organized labor. Because we understand the importance of what organized labor has meant to the American journey. My mom and dad were both public servants throughout their entire lives. My mom worked for 45 years, DC 37, for the city of New York. My dad, he worked for 30 years. He was a member of the Public Employees Foundation. He was a substance abuse social worker dealing with addiction. During the heroin explosion of the 1970s, the crack cocaine epidemic of the 1980s. But they got married in 1967. And they were newlyweds. And many people familiar with the history of the labor movement, particularly in New York City, know that in 1967, the Social Service Employees Union, which they both belonged to at the time, famously went on strike for better pay, better health care, better working conditions, and most importantly, better service to the clients that they served. And I've thought about that fact. They were newlyweds. A few months in, and they had to make a decision when the Social Service Employees Union went out on strike, whether they would cross the picket line, because it was unclear, perhaps, how they would pay for food and rent and clothing as newlyweds in a new city. Or, Mr. Speaker, were they going to stand in solidarity with their union brothers and sisters? I'm so thankful, Mr. Speaker, when I learned that my parents made that decision to stand on that picket line for as long as it took in solidarity with their union brothers and sisters. That's part of our DNA. That's part of why we fight so hard. We can all trace a similar story. An inheritance from our parents and our grandparents, all of us. have that kind of story to tell. Why am I so thankful that my parents made what I believe was a tough personal decision, but of course the right decision? It's because what that union membership actually meant to my journey and my younger brother's journey. 1973, my younger brother was born with a serious heart condition. He's okay right now. He's doing well. Right now, he continues to say on social media that he's our mother's favorite son. Let me say from the House floor, no, you are not. I think she favors both of us. A younger brother, 1973, he's born with a serious heart condition. He's okay right now. He's born with a serious heart condition. I'm thankful that it was that union negotiated health care that got our family through that difficult moment. That's why we do what we do. Our own personal experience. And then in the early 80s, my parents, modest living. Neither of them, even at the tail end of decades-long careers, ever made more than $50,000. Modest living. But in the early 80s in Crown Heights, rough neighborhood, central Brooklyn, they bought their first and only home. They were able to buy that home, the home that my younger brother Hassan and I were raised in, because of that union negotiated salary, and pay off the mortgage down to zero because of that union negotiated salary. This is personal to us, our own journey. And lastly, as it relates to this part of my journey, why we all fight for what we fight for, why we stood behind Mike Thompson's amendment to protect good-paying union jobs. I went to college. I went to Binghamton University. When I first got here, I was surprised to learn, actually, that I was the first graduate of Binghamton University ever elected to the United States Congress. I was shocked to learn that, but not the last. Because Vindman and Mannion have now joined us. And so we tripled the size of the Binghamton University delegation. It's part of the reason why we stand up for higher education and public education. That's our own experience. So I graduated from Binghamton University. My younger brother graduated from Morehouse University. I think that was Hank Johnson. Sanford Bishop. Graduated from Morehouse. I graduated from Binghamton University. And somehow, we managed to graduate from college without owing anything. And for the life of me, I couldn't figure out how. Because as I mentioned, my mom, my dad, they just earned a modest living all throughout their careers. So one day I had a conversation with my mom and I was trying to figure it out. How did you pull that off? She said, well, I wanted to make sure my two sons could have a clean start to life. So I borrowed against my union negotiated pension to make sure my two sons could get free and clear of loans and get a higher education as part of our effort to experience the American dream. And so we all say to our brothers and sisters in organized labor, you don't ever have to worry about whether House Democrats are going to stand up for you, because you've always been there for us. You've always been there for us. You've always been there for us. That's our personal story. And every single one of us, we do this work because we've lived a life of opportunity that this great country has provided to us. And we're deeply troubled, saddened, disgusted that this great institution, this House of Representatives, Mr. Speaker, Republicans are trying to jam this one big ugly bill down the throats of the American people. A bill that hurts everyday Americans in order to reward billionaires with massive tax breaks. Shame on this institution if that bill ever passes. And so we say to the American people, we've been working hard to try to get this bill into a better situation, introducing amendment after amendment after amendment. Representative Judy Chu, the Chair Emeritus of KPAC, one of our extraordinary leaders, my good friend Grace Meng, she now chairs KPAC, but Representative Judy Chu, she had an amendment that no one earning more than $10 million per year receives a tax cut to prevent this reverse Robin Hood and the ballooning of the debt by $4 trillion. Mr. Speaker, you know, Republicans voted down that amendment. We support, as Democrats, providing tax relief to everyday Americans. We're willing to work in a bipartisan way to deal with that issue under the leadership of Richie Neal. But Republicans decided, Mr. Speaker, as you know, to go down this partisan road, play partisan games, try to jam this extreme budget down the throats of the American people. And so amendment after amendment after amendment introduced by House Democrats in good faith, exercising common sense to try to improve this bill. Representative Jimmy Gomez, the chair of the Dad's Caucus here in the United States House of Representatives, he had an amendment to ensure that people who make $1 billion a year don't get a tax break paid for by cutting Americans' health care and food assistance. Mr. Speaker, you know, Republicans voted that down. my good friend and classmate, Representative Susan Del Bene, she had an amendment that would have made the child tax credit fully refundable. Susan Del Bene, a great champion of the child tax credit. Let me also shout out a person that I believe is the mother of the enhanced and expanded child tax credit as well, the top Democrat on the Appropriations Committee, Rosa DeLauro. We're thankful for your leadership, Rosa. Fighting hard on behalf of the American people. Susan Del Bene, a great champion of the child tax credit. She had an amendment, Mr. Speaker, to make the child tax credit fully refundable, covering the 17 million children who are being left behind by the big, ugly bill, and increase the child tax credit for families. Because what Republicans are doing, Mr. Speaker, as you know, in this particular bill, not enhancing and expanding the child tax credit, you are undermining the child tax credit. And Representative Susan Del Bene, my classmate, along with Catherine Clark and others, the class of 2012. We used to be the new kids on the block, now we're just the OGs. Susan Del Bene, she introduces this amendment, and Mr. Speaker, as you know, Republicans voted it down. Representative Laura Gillen had an amendment that dealt with this issue a little bit earlier. The new and permanent cap on state and local tax deduction. Representative Laura Gillen had an amendment to strike the new and permanent cap on SALT, which is something that members of the House Republican Conference, Mr. Speaker, as you know, claimed was a line in the sand for them, specifically from New York, and said that they support. But Republicans voted down that amendment from Representative Laura Gillen. Representative Mary Gay Scanlon from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, one of the great members of the class of 2018, a great class. She had an amendment that would protect infants, babies, American citizens born in this country from the unconstitutional and un-American Trump executive order to end birthright citizenship. Republicans voted that down. Let me make something clear. No matter what it takes, we're going to make sure as House Democrats we stand up for the principle that every single child born in the United States of America, pursuant to the 14th Amendment, is an American citizen. We will never let anyone take that away. Not now, not ever. Not now, not ever. Not now, Not ever. I think Mary Gay Scanlon, I'm appreciative of my big brother, Congressman Greg Meeks, my big brother in the United States Congress. We're a family as House Democrats, committed to working hard, standing up on behalf of the American people. It's an honor of a lifetime to be part of this family. To stand on the shoulders of Nancy Pelosi and Steny Hoyer and Jim Clyburn. It's an honor to be part of this family. Fight hard on behalf of the American people. Representative Mary Gay Scanlon, I've got to repeat this, had an amendment, Mr. Speaker, to protect infants, children, babies against the unconstitutional and un-American Trump executive order to end birthright citizenship. Republicans voted that down. Representative Pramila Jayapal had an amendment to prevent ICE from deporting U.S. citizens. United States citizens, Mr. Speaker, that are being deported by the Trump administration. I documented some of that earlier today. We're happy to provide more examples. In fact, I'm happy to debate my colleague, Speaker Mike Johnson, on any of these issues anytime, right here on the floor of the House of Representatives. I sent you that invitation.